Gideon Levy and Amir Rahas and Jeff Halper of ICAT, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, and Nurit Pellet and Shulamit Aloni, but their number has dwindled in the last 30 years to nearly nothing. So I would guess, well, I know them all personally. That's about it. That's a bit of what in my youth was called Yiddish exaggeration. So I don't know them all, but it is very, very few. And formerly, you had thousands, hundreds of thousands, I think, to protest against, after Sabra and Shatila, I think there were more than 100,000 on Rabin Plain to protest. Now, it's a handful of people who come to protest against the mass murder in Gaza. So we should be very careful that not all the Israelis, but the number is ever smaller.
Do you just want to quickly also talk about the academic and cultural boycott? Because she was saying her brother was invited over and refused to go. Just briefly.
Look, I always say the following. I don't know the whole world, but I would be astonished if someone would say the cruelest country in the world is Israel. But I know one thing in which Israel is world champion, and that is in the discrepancy between pretension of being cultured and civilized and the daily inhuman practice that you see there. They are world champions, and therefore of boycott, disinvestment and sanctions, the boycott of Israeli academics and the boycott of Israeli artists is one of the most effective boycotts you can do, much more so than if you don't buy Jaffa oranges, I think.
And on that, actually, the Alan Palestine Solidarity Campaign is going to have a boycott seminar in April. We hope you're all going to be there.
So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the organizing Hajo and myself and many others are doing to build the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network and why we organized as Jews against Zionism. So one of the things that everyone in the network shares in common is that we draw our history from the long history of Jewish participation in different liberation struggles, not only our own, but liberation struggles in different parts of the world, whether it was labor struggles in Eastern Europe, or the civil rights struggle in the United States, or struggles in Iraq, the communist struggle in Iraq. And so we see that at this moment in history, continuity or continuing that history requires that we challenge the misuse of Jewish history for the justification of the settlement and continued colonization of Palestine. So we organize against the claim that Israel is supported by all Jews or that it speaks for all Jews. We organize against the claim that Jews are only safe if they live in isolation and through dominating another people and the people who they live around. In contrast, we disagree with the Zionist claim that accepts anti-Jewish oppression, accepts anti-Semitism, and we believe that our task as humanity is to find ways to live with each other, and that we need to challenge prejudice wherever it is, and prejudice is certainly not exceptional to Jews. In fact, here in Europe, as well as in the United States, some of the communities most experiencing prejudice now are Muslim communities, Arab communities, West Asian, Central Asian communities that are really being targeted by Islamophobia and racism. But we also organize against the way that Israel is in service of it used to be in service of the European agenda, but now the U.S. agenda for military and economic dominance in the region, against a mutually beneficial relationship, against the vast amount of money that Europe and the United States makes on arms trade with Israel, against the way in which particularly the United States hires and engages Israel to support, train repressive regimes all over the world. And it certainly did in South Africa, and it continues to do so in the United States. The United States is now bringing in the Israel occupation forces to train the U.S. police in population control. They brought them in to control populations in Katrina. They have formal contracts with cities of Atlanta and Los Angeles. So there's a great relationship, and Hajo talks about the support of Israel being about sort of softening the guilt of European countries. I think that that's a false guilt, and that Europe has done very little to challenge the racism and nationalism that's at the roots of it, and that's why we see it acceptable to then target other people in the same way Jews were targeted, but the excuse being support of Israel. It's very twisted. So we organized largely to confront our own governments, and also to raise consciousness in the countries that we're in, and to look at what Zionism as not only something that affects people in Palestine, but that also affects people in our own countries, not just people targeted by Islamophobia, but in the United States, the vast amount of money we spend, $3 billion a year, on supporting aid to Israel, and then the even greater amounts of money that we spend on the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan has great costs for people in the United States, as well as, of course, all the lives that it costs all over the world, and perhaps spinning us to a global war. So we have chapters across Europe, including in London. We have chapters across the United States. We have activists inside of Israel. We particularly work with Jews of Arab descent, Mizrahi Jews, who are challenging the state of Israel, both in terms of their solidarity with Palestinians, but also because there's incredible racism against Arab Jews inside of Israel. We have activists in India and Argentina and Canada, and new chapters forming in New Zealand, and interest in South Africa. So we're trying to grow an international force and a voice to challenge Zionism that's on scale with how Zionism operates, which is internationally. This specific tour was organized intentionally to overlap with the UN-declared Holocaust Remembrance Day, Holocaust Memorial Day. And the title of the tour really speaks for why we've organized it, which is we reject the exceptionalizing of the Nazi genocide of Jews, which is not to say it wasn't specific, but A, many, many other people died at the hands of the Nazis, and B, there's many genocides across history, and to exceptionalize it makes it so we can't understand it. The Nazi genocide was an internal manifestation in Europe of hundreds of years of colonization that created genocides across the Americas and Africa and all different parts of the world. And the reason we think it's important to connect these things is so that we can really look at what it will take to stop it. And one of the things at one of our talks, a woman from Rwanda also spoke on the Rwandan genocide, and one of the things that she said that was so important is that denying genocide is one of the things that can almost guarantee that there will be a future of genocide. And it was the Nazis who said no one remembers the Armenian genocide, and therefore who will remember our genocide. And Haider Eid spoke about that in 2008, the lack of international response gave a green light for an even more vicious attack in 2009. We don't want to wait until 2010, and for us it's very important to name what is happening in Gaza as state-directed mass murder and a different form of genocide. And that we need to do that in order to awaken and hold the rest of the international community accountable to never again for anyone. The other work